Thank you, Tando. Well, I'm sitting here with Stavros Nicolaou from Aspen. Well, if you remember, Aspen pledged to invest 3.4 billion in 2018 at the investment conference, and that has gone to the building of the vaccine manufacturing plant in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape. Now today they have pledged further 500 million of investments. Stavros, take us through what will be happening with the 500 million.
Gloria, firstly, thanks very much for having me in studio. As you correctly point out, the 3.4 billion rand investment, which was announced at the inaugural South African Investment Conference in 2018, has established South Africa as a leading producer of general anesthetics for the world. It also allowed us to pivot into the manufacturing of COVID vaccines, what we call fill and finish of COVID vaccines. Today's further 500 million rand commitment that Aspen has made is to expand the capacity of our vaccine capability. It presently stands at 350 million doses per year. This now expands to 700 million doses annualized at conclusion or execution of today's commitment.
And you think 3 weeks ago you signed a vaccine licensing deal with J&J. What does that mean for South Africa?
So Aspen has been in a contract manufacturing relationship with Johnson & Johnson. The natural progression from that was for Aspen to acquire its own vaccine, which would be a vaccine for South Africa and for the continent. Signing the deal, what we call a definitive agreement 3 weeks ago, now enables Aspen to launch its own equivalent of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which will be called Aspenovax. And we are doing all the necessary processes required for us to produce this vaccine eventually at our Gqeberha facilities for the African continent.
As an investor, what is it that is so appealing about South Africa?
Aspen has been a serial investor in South Africa. We've invested in excess of 8 billion rand into the South African economy, mostly in the Eastern Cape. We've done that, we're a fairly young company, we're around 23 years old. So 8 billion or more, just to place in perspective, is bigger than the entire pharmaceutical industry has invested in the last 30 years. So that demonstrates Aspen's commitment to South Africa. Now, why South Africa? Our experience of South Africa has been a good one. Of course, like any other emerging market, it has its challenges. We know there are power issues, there are water issues, but we also find that there's good infrastructure in South Africa. We've invested heavily in training and skilling our workforce in South Africa, and many of the now trained and skilled workforce who initially had very little skills are one of our global competitiveness features at Aspen, and those are South Africans that we employ. We've brought technologies into the country, and we find that when there are issues, the infrastructural challenges and the likes thereof, we find a very responsive government that does look into issues.
With the plant in Gqeberha and now the 500 million extension, the number of jobs that you've created and those that will come upstream because of this investment?
Look, it's very difficult for me to speak to upstream jobs. Of course, there will be upstream jobs because you're introducing new value chains and linkages. So the value chains and linkages are very important to answer your question. What I can tell you is with this investment we announced today, once it's executed, between 250 to 500 new jobs will be created. And of course, there will be subsidiary value chains and linkages that will benefit from that, whether it's producers of sterile gowns or gloves, or packaging companies, or even possibly those that produce glass vials.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, that was Stavros Nicolaou from Aspen taking us through their investments in Gqeberha and their new pledge that they've made today. Well, it's back to studio and we're going for a break now.